How's it going, YouTube? Donald here. In this video, I'm going to talk about the fastest way to learn to code in 2022. Now, if you don't know about this story, I'm going to go over that real quick. So, I studied electrical engineering in college, and during the curriculum, I took a couple classes in like C, very basic stuff. A lot of my program was dedicated to MATLAB, which was kind of similar, but in my opinion, kind of useless. But that's beside the point of the video. I never really got into programming until actually after I graduated university in 2020, right? So, yes, I did have a slight background in, coding and programming, but not really all that much. Not as much as, say, your typical computer science major. So that's kind of the background that I went through. And then obviously, as I was starting to learn, I started off doing web development. I also did a little bit of mobile development, which is what I'm doing nowadays. So, I made a lot of mistakes along the way, and I just wanted to share all of those in this video so that you don't go through those same mistakes that I did, and that your journey is going to be a lot shorter than mine was, because it did take me about 2 years to really, put things together and really learn how to program. And I don't want that to happen to you guys. So I'm going to tell you all the trials and tribulations that I went through that contributed to me taking longer than it really should have. So the first thing that happened to me was I set unrealistic expectations. Now, especially when I was younger, I was young and I was very stupid, to be honest with you, and I was a sucker for marketing. So you'll see a lot on, you know, coding channels and all these different boot camps and programs that claim that they can teach you in 6 months or 12 months. They can take you from not taking a line of code and then suddenly becoming a full-on web developer or a full-on software engineer. And in my opinion, this is just not realistic, especially for the majority of people. You're not going to learn to code in 6 months. It's just not possible, right? Especially if you come from a non-technical background. Like, even people that I've seen that come from technical backgrounds like engineering and physics and math, they take at least 6 to 12 months. And this is not like 6 to 12 months of, you know, part-time kind of doing it on the weekend. These are the type of people, the ones you see that how I went from, not writing a line of code to being a software developer in 6 months. The side that you don't see in them is the fact that they quit their job and they dedicated 40 plus hours to learning how to program, right? So that was the main thing. Now, why am I telling you this information? Is because I see a lot of people get into the trap of setting these artificial constraints, like, I need to learn how to program in 6 months. And then they get to the 6 month part, and then they realize that they don't have a job yet, or they're not competent enough, or they're still stuck in tutorial hell. And then they end up quitting, or they end up jumping to another field, right? And I don't want that to happen to you. I want you to succeed. But that kind of brings me on to my second point, which is, setting these realistic expectations. Instead of thinking in these short-term, brackets of 6 months or even 12 months, think of 5 year or, a couple years in advance. You'd have to imagine into your mind what you want to accomplish in years instead of in months. Because one of my mentors once told me that mistakes love a rushed decision, and I just found this to be so true, especially when it comes to, learning any hard skill, whether that's development, whether that's going to the gym, whether that's learning, how to play an instrument. You can't be thinking in months, in terms of months increments. You have to think of years, right? And the decisions that you make in a yearly basis compared to a monthly basis is going to be completely different. And I argue that, the stuff that decisions you make if you take from a year long increments is going to be a much wiser decision than it would be if you were to think in like 6 or 12 month increments. Now, let me give you an example to illustrate this point really, really clearly, right? So if you think in like, say, 6 month increments, it's going to be, how can I get a job in 6 months, right? So your goal is the outcome. It's to get a job in 6 months. And that's going to be it's going to be very vague, right? It's like, to get a job in 6 months, well, what am I going to do, right? And that's going to be more decisions that you have to make in order to get to the point where you're actually competent enough to get that job in 6 months. Now, is that to say that people can't do it? No, of course not. But the majority of people, unless you come from a technical background and you have the time and the means to, put in all that effort, then it's just not a realistic goal, right? Now let's compare that to thinking in, say, 5 year increments, right? So if you think in 5 year increments, you think that in 5 years, I'm going to be working as a software developer and perhaps getting up to going into that mid-level. That gives you a good 4 years of time to actually, learn everything. So now you can take your time to, find something that you enjoy, to find, to build these interesting projects, to, get to the point where you're good enough to pass the algorithm interviews, to be knowledgeable enough to pass these interviews, to get a job, and to learn enough such that an employer is going to take a chance on you, right? Because you think about it, right? If I think in 5 year increments, then, maybe I spend my first year just learning the syntax, and then I spend my second year building out interesting projects that I want to build and that I find valuable, right? And then third year, I'm going to, start applying to jobs, start seeing if my skills are valuable in the marketplace, right? And that brings me to my third point, is taking an entrepreneurial approach to learning software development. Because let me make this clear. When you're a software developer, your goal is to solve problems for a particular side of business, right? If you break it down, all that you are doing is providing value to a company that is solving an issue in the marketplace, right? So basically, to boil this down, we're going to start from personal project level. What you want to do is you want to build projects that solve problems in your own life, right? Because that's step one to actually learning how to code, is finding these problems. And this is honestly something that, I haven't seen many people actually talk about. It's because, everyone wants you to watch your tutorial or buy your course, but I'm giving you this information for free. So what you want to do is you want to find a problem that, you're facing in your day-to-day life right now, right? And don't give me the stuff that you aren't experiencing any problems right now, because everyone does experience some sort of problems or some sort of inconveniences, right? And then step two is, once you identify those problems or inconveniences, you're going to use code to solve those problems and to make it easier for you. And then that's going to be your personal project, right? So let me give you an example here. So let's just say that I'm working in data entry, right? I want to find prospects and I want to put them in a spreadsheet. Very simple problem, right? I want to find email addresses, right? What if I created a Python bot that would allow me to automatically get these email addresses and put them into my Google Sheet? Now that actually answers the second question that most people will oftentimes ask, is what language should I learn, right? And then they spend, months, or they watch way too much YouTube in order to figure out what language should they learn, when really they should because at the end of the day, I know multiple languages. I know how to use JavaScript. I know Python. I know Swift, and at the end of the day, it's all just syntax, right? Swift has some different syntax, JavaScript has some different syntax, Python has some different syntax. So at the end of the day, the language that you learn actually doesn't really matter. It's a problem that you're solving that matters more than the actual language that you're learning, right? So getting back to the point of solving problems, you find the problem, and then you think to yourself what the best solution to this problem actually is, and what's the most viable way to actually do that, right? So I'll give you an example again, going back to my whole data entry example. So let's just say that, I wanted to get email addresses, right? So in order to get email addresses, I could use Python, I could use Swift, but Python has a Selenium library, and that's probably going to make more sense than it would be if you were to use, say, I don't know, C++ or Java, you know? So after you figured out what that problem is and what a potential solution is, now it's time for implementation. Now, during the implementation phase is when people get into traps, they get into tutorial hell. But because you've taken this like problem approach to it, you're going in at a different way. What you need to do is you need to break down the problem into the different subcomponents of the problem that you need to solve, right? So what do I mean by that? So let's go back to the data entry example of the problem. An example is okay, so where am I getting my records from? Where am I getting my email addresses from? Am I getting it from, the actual website where I have to click through and I have to find an address? Or am I actually getting it from like a program or something, right? And then from there, I can say, well, in order to get that, well, first I have to figure out how to, click links to actually get to the website. So that's going to be step one. And then step two, you're going to, try to find the website. So I'm going to look for certain strings that are going to identify that this is an email address, right? And then step three is, okay, I have the email address, I've stored it in a variable. How do I move it to a CSV file or an Excel file or a MongoDB database? And then there you can ask the questions of what you want to use and talk a little bit about the different trade-offs between the different strategies, right? This is the way that you're actually going to get out of tutorial hell. Is you're actually going to build projects that provide value to your own life, and this is going to help you with your motivation. It's going to help you become a better developer, and it's also going to help you to separate yourself from all the other wannabe developers that are simply following the Udemy tutorials. Because I've talked to a lot of like senior software engineers and stuff like that, and a big problem for them, especially for entry-level candidates, is to sort out the tutorial developers from the actual junior developers. So that's the first hurdle you have to come through. In order to do that, that's why I recommend that you solve your own business problems or your own personal problems, and that's basically personal problems equals personal projects. Now, going back to my example on, the whole spiel about problems and stuff, you have to think of what business is at a fundamental level, because you're going to be entering a company, and a company is a business, right? So you have to ask yourself, this is basically step 3 of the process is, applying to jobs. So once you built your own personal projects and personal issues, now it's your job to find companies that, have similar issues to the ones that you're solving, except on a smaller scale, right? So you built this project, it's probably not going to go past, yourself or maybe a couple friends. But if you understand what a personal project versus what you're going to be working on in a company, it's going to be really helpful for you to build the right personal projects and identify the right companies once you build these personal projects, right? So let's go back to the whole company side of things, right? So as a developer, you're going to typically be working for a company, whether that's going to be a startup, whether that's going to be a big company like Fang, or it's going to be, some other company. Fundamentally, a company exists to solve problems for a wide range of customers. And the bigger the company is, the bigger the problem that they're actually solving. Let me give you an example here. Let's take the big companies like Amazon, for example, Fang. We'll go through each of the examples so that you understand, what it is that these companies are actually solving, right? Let's take Amazon for an example. So their whole thing, the thing that they're solving, is providing products at the lowest prices with the fastest shipping, and having a great customer experience. That's the whole spiel of Amazon, and that's actually true. If you look at Jeff Bezos' letters to shareholders, he talks about this, right? And you take Google. Google helps the world to get information a lot easier. With a Google search, you can basically get any of the information that you are looking for. Let's go to Facebook, right? Facebook seeks to connect people from all around the world in one central place, right? And then you have Apple, which is providing you with the best phones that are dead simple to use, right? So once you understand this is going to help you to, cater your resume or cater your outreach efforts to these companies. You're going to say, if I've built projects, like say I go back to my data entry project, and I take this to a company and I say, let's just say they're offering easier email capture, email verifiability, like hunter.io. Like, you can go to these companies and say, hey, look, this is a project that I built. It really helps, people retrieve email addresses easier so that they can use it for their personal projects, or their personal projects, or maybe you're a sales guy and you're looking for an outreach campaign. And then if you're hunter.io, you see that on a resume and you're like, oh, that's interesting. That solves the exact problem that I'm facing in my business right now, that you can come in and provide value to right away, right? Because employees are just like, or not employees, but employers are just like you and me, right? They want the maximum profit with the least effort. Just like you want to learn to code with the least effort in the least amount of time. That's really the main reason why senior software engineers are so sought after, is because their ramp up time and their training time is going to be a lot less and a lot less costly to the individual or the employer, such that they don't have to invest as much time or as much resources as it would for, say, a junior candidate, right? So if you can prove to these employers that that you're going to be an asset and that your ramp up time is going to be a lot less, then that's actually going to help you to speed up the process and get a job a lot faster, right? So that's really the main formula that you need to understand in order to get a job as quickly as possible in the software field, and not get stuck in tutorial hell, and not get stuck in watching these endless tutorials. So if you guys found this video helpful, give it a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.